All right, you can turn to 1 Kings 12. 1 Kings 12. Oh, my water bottle back here. I might just need it between singing and preaching.
Daddy,
The voice goes for an hour.
Daddy, are you going to do the extra stuff that you did do last time? We needed to start that.
No, we're not doing that. At least not anytime soon. All right, let's pray and get started. Lord, I thank you for the privilege of looking at your word. I pray you help me now as I preach, that I preach clearly and concisely, and you work in each of our lives. We love you so much. Keep us focused each on you right now. In your name, amen. Boam belligerence against God. That's why I entitled this sermon. Kind of a strange name. Boam belligerence against God. There's two kings that are the subject of 1 Kings 12 through 14. They're Rehoboam and Jeroboam. And they are belligerent towards God. To be belligerent means to be inclined to or exhibiting assertiveness, hostility, or combativeness, waging war, specifically belonging to or recognized as a state of war and protected by and subject to the laws of war. Basically, they're at war with God. These two individuals, Rehoboam and Jeroboam, do not follow what the previous king did. Previous King Solomon, while he wasn't perfect, and we know from when I was preaching last time, he made some mistakes, especially towards the end of his life, but there was a decent portion of his life that he lived for the Lord. Okay? And then, of course, there was King David before that, who, outside of the issue with Uriah, he really was a very good king. Rehoboam and Jeroboam are different. Both wage spiritual war with God. We're going to look, first of all, at Rehoboam's sin. And then we're going to look at Jeroboam's sin. Rehoboam, chapter 12, verse 1. Sorry, not chapter 1. Chapter 12, verse 1. And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel were come to Shechem to make him king. And it came to pass, when Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he had fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke upon us he put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee. And he said unto them, Depart yet for 3 days, and come again to me. And the people departed. All right, well, first of all, right now things sound okay. They're saying, okay, Solomon put a heavy yoke on us, heavy taxation, make it lighter, we'll serve you. Rehoboam does one thing right here. He says, you know what, I need counsel. Come back in 3 days. Then we'll decide. Verse 5, verse 6, and King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, and said, How do ye advise that I may answer this people? And they spake unto him, saying, If thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and wilt serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. But he forsook the counsel of the old men which they had given, and consulted with the young men that were grown up with him, and which stood before him. And he said unto them, What counsel give ye that we may answer this people who have spoken to me, saying, Make the yoke of which thy father put upon us lighter? And the young men that were grown up with him spake unto him, saying, Thus shalt thou speak unto this people that spake unto thee, saying, Thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us. Thus shalt thou say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. And now whereas my father did lade you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father hath chastened you with whips, but I will chasten you with scorpions. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the third day as the king had appointed, saying, Come to me again the third day. And the king answered the people roughly, and forsook the old men's counsel that they gave him, and spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My father chastened you with whips, but I will chasten you with scorpions. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people, for the cause was from the Lord, that he might perform his saying which the Lord spake by Ahijah the Shilonite unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. So when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto him, the people answered the king, saying, What portion have we in David, neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel, now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed into their tents. But as for the children of Israel, which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. Proverbs 1:7 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. While this split in the kingdom had been ordained by God, it was through the foolishness of Rehoboam that it happened. Instead of realizing his own lack of wisdom and listening to the counsel of the old men, he listened instead to the foolishness of the young men and lost a good chunk of the kingdom. Israel had the 12 tribes, technically 11 locations, because the 12th tribe was the tribe of Levi, which did not have land granted to them. And the way that they looked at their individual tribes was kind of like, if you go back in history to the United States of America, go back to the way the states used to look at themselves, and are starting to look more that way now, as each state is its own individual kind of miniature country, all working together as one large country. And each of these sections, these families, Reuben, Simeon, whatever, all these different tribes, you want to divide them out. Each one looked very much at themselves as their own autonomous unit. And they had served the previous 3 kings together. Well, now this is changing. So Judah sticks with Rehoboam. Jeroboam gets all the others. This is what foolishness gets you. Yes, it was ordained by God. God said this was going to happen. But Rehoboam should have listened. Okay? Rehoboam should have listened to the old men and their wisdom. When you have a situation where you've got wisdom coming from old men versus young men, old wisdom versus new wisdom, as a general rule in life, there is wisdom from the gray hair. Okay? The School of Hard Knocks, the experience, does give you wisdom. There's obviously times that that's not always the case. As Timothy was told, don't let no man despise thy youth. Pastor brought up that verse today in church this morning, okay? Youth is not 100% foolishness and stupidity. It's not the way it is. But there's wisdom to be had from those who've lived life and went through many experiences. As the saying goes, there's nothing new under the sun. So what ends up happening then? Rehoboam ends up assembling an army of 180,000 to fight with Israel. He wants it back. I want that back. So what I'm going to do, we're all family here, but let's get a huge army together and go fight. This is a good idea, right? This is what God says. Verse 24 of chapter 12. Thus saith the Lord, ye shall not go up nor fight against your brethren, the children of Israel. Return every man to his house, for this thing is from me. They hearkened therefore to the word of the Lord and returned to depart according to the word of the Lord. Okay? So that's good. That's a good thing. But not listening to the wisdom of the old men was sin. Jump to chapter 14, verse 21. Chapter 14, verse 21. Chapter 14, 21. And Rehoboam the son of Solomon reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which the Lord did choose out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. And his mother's name was Naaman the Ammonitess. And Judah did evil in the sight of the Lord, and they provoked him to jealousy with their sins, which they had committed above all that their fathers had done. For they yet also built them high places and images and groves on every high hill and under every green tree. And there were also Sodomites in the land, and they did according to all the abominations of the nations which the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. One of the commentaries I was reading suggested, I think maybe it's suggested possibly in the Hebrew that this is the case, the Sodomites were part of the worship. It's not just that there were some Sodomites in the land, it's that they were actually part of the worship that was done in Israel. That was not uncommon to bring those sorts of things into the worship of pagan gods. Well, Israel worshiping pagan gods brought that in. We don't know that for sure. It's just implied, possibly. Verse 25. And it came to pass in the 5th year of King Rehoboam that Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem. And he took away the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house. He even took away all, and he took away all the shields of gold which Solomon had made. And King Rehoboam made in their stead brazen shields, and committed them into the hands of the chief of the guard, which kept the door of the king's house. And it was so, when the king went into the house of the Lord, that the guard bare them and brought them back into the guard chamber. The son of Solomon had seen much. He knew what was right. He was 41 when he began to reign. King Solomon reigned how many years? You all remember?
25.
It's 40. So, this fellow, Rehoboam, would have been born in the 1st year of Solomon's reign. Okay? He was 40, or no, he was 41, so Solomon reigned 40, so he would have been born a year before Solomon started to reign. Yeah, I've got to get my math right there. So he saw all of it. He saw Solomon doing what is right. He saw the wisdom. He saw the glory. He saw the splendor. He saw God blessing Solomon. Then he saw God bring all kinds of trouble into Solomon's life when Solomon chose to follow the gods of all of his strange wives that he took unto him. He saw all of that and the trouble it brought him. So what does he do? Doesn't follow that. He doesn't follow what he didn't learn from his father's mistakes. He should have. He should have, but he didn't. According to Egyptian records, Shishak, king of Egypt, captured around 19 towns. Only by paying off Shishak, also called Sheshquak, and S-H-E-S-H-O-N-Q, however you say that, was Rehoboam able to spare the capture of Jerusalem. He had to take all this gold that was set aside by his father and pay off Shishak just to get him to stop fighting him and capturing stuff. Rehoboam's father, King Solomon, had been married to who? Pharaoh's daughter. Rehoboam was attacked by Egypt. Think about the irony of that. Verse 29. Now the rest of the acts of Rehoboam and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all their days. Rehoboam slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And his mother's name was Naaman the Ammonitess, and Abijam, his son, reigned in his stead. Bow and belligerence, part 2. Jeroboam's sin. Go back to chapter 12, verse 25. Chapter 12, verse 25. Then Jeroboam built Shechem and Mount Ephraim and dwelt therein, and went out from thence and built Penuel. Verse 26 of chapter 12. And Jeroboam said in his heart, now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. If this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam king of Judah. And they shall kill me, and go again to Rehoboam king of Judah. Whereupon the king took counsel, and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Who had given Jeroboam the 10 tribes? God did. God had told him, while Solomon was still on the throne, when Solomon's gone, I'm going to give you 10 tribes because of Solomon's sin. But now he's worried that he's going to lose them. So instead of trusting the person who gave it to him in the first place, God, who has all power and can give and take away, what does he do? Does something completely against the one who gave him the tribes in the first place. Sets up a calf worship system. Says, behold thy gods. This is very similar to what was said at the golden calf incident at Mount Sinai. Those that don't learn from history are bound to repeat it. Aaron, here, behold your God brought you out of Egypt. Jeroboam, behold your gods which brought you out of Egypt. Worship them. You don't need to go down to the temple in Jerusalem. Just stay here. We got it all figured out. Verse 29 of chapter 12, and he set the one at Bethel, and the other he in Dan. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. And he made an house of high places, and made priests of the lowest people, which were not of the sons of Levi. And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast which is in Judah, and he offered upon the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. And these priests, these leaders, these spiritual leaders that were set up, were people of the lowest estate. They had no business doing this job. They didn't know what they were doing. They were not qualified. Unfortunately, you see this sort of thing repeated in Christianity sometimes today, where they will take some of the lowest people that don't know what they're talking about. And they'll set them up there and say, hey, tell us what we need to know. It's not good. One of the weaknesses of if you see it's popular in churches today, you do the small group thing. Everybody goes, sits around a circle and talks about, whatever the subject is for the day. Sometimes there's a leader put into a position there. Sometimes it's just kind of everybody says what they want to say about it. The problem with that, then, is you have a church of 100 people, okay? Divide it out into groups of 10, small groups of 10, right? Are you really going to have 10 qualified leaders to lead each of those groups? Probably not. What ends up happening sometimes in those groups is you end up with people that aren't qualified, who don't really have any business doing it because they haven't studied the Bible enough, trying to lead these groups. What do you end up with then? Theological error. And then those groups start to become their own little miniature church, being led by somebody who's a novice. And that's one of the better scenarios. Sometimes what happens is literally nobody's in charge, and it's just everybody chatting about whatever they think about the Bible. And it's not being guided in a proper way. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go sit down and talk about the Bible. The other extreme to that is you can do like the Amish, where you're only allowed to discuss the Bible. I think, let me see if I remember how they say this. It is, you can't discuss the Bible on your own. You can only do it like with the bishop and stuff. So it's only what the bishop says that goes. So if it doesn't come from the bishop, so you can't go search the scriptures daily to see that these things are so. Okay? And by doing that, there's a lot of control that can be exerted, spiritual control that can be exerted on people. So there's a balance there, but you don't want to take a novice, a new believer, somebody who doesn't know, and put them up in a high position and say, hey, tell us what we need to know. Even the Apostle Paul, after he was converted, he did not begin his ministry right away. It was years later that he was out preaching publicly. Okay? Why? He had stuff to learn. He had spiritual growing to do. And he knew the Old Testament like the back of his hand when he got saved. So, anyways, let's keep going here. Verse 32, I believe, is where we need to start there. And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah. And he offered upon the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. So he offered upon the altar which he had made in Bethel the 15th day of the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised of his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel. And he offered upon the altar and burnt incense. He crafts a fake system here. It's a copycat of what was set up by God to be done in Jerusalem. Creates a copycat feast day, creates a copycat worship system. But what does the Bible say about idols? What does the Bible say about false gods? This is not glorifying to God. So God sends a prophet to cry against the altar that Jeroboam had set up. Chapter 13, verse 1. It And behold, there came a man of God out of Judah by the word of the Lord unto Bethel, and Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense. And he cried against the altar and the word of the Lord, and said, O altar, altar, thus saith the Lord, behold, a child shall be born unto the house of David, Josiah by name, and upon thee shall he offer the priests of the high places that burn incense unto thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon thee. The prophetic words about the future king Josiah point forward to a time when all the northern Israelite dynasties have come to an end, and only the house of David remains to take action against Bethel. Okay? Verse 3, and he gave a sign the same day, saying, This is the sign which the Lord hath spoken. Behold, the altar shall be rent, and the ashes that are upon it shall be poured out. And it came to pass when King Jeroboam heard the saying of the man of God, which had cried against the altar in Bethel, that he put forth his hand from the altar, saying, Lay hold on him! And his hand which he put forth against him dried up, so that he could not pull it in again to him. The altar was also rent, and the ashes poured out from the altar, according to the sign which the man of God had given by the word of the Lord. And the king answered and said unto the man of God, Entreat now the face of the Lord thy God, and pray for me, that my hand may be restored again to me. And the man of God besought the Lord, and the king's hand was restored to him again, and became as it was before. And the king said unto the man of God, Come home with me, and refresh thyself, and I will give thee a reward. And the man of God said unto the king, If thou wilt give me half thine house, I will not go in with thee. Neither will I eat bread, nor drink water in this place. For so was it charged me by the word of the Lord, saying, Eat no bread, nor drink water, nor turn again by the same way which thou camest. So he went another way, and returned not by the way that he came to Bethel. The sign is given and eventually fulfilled to show God's stamp of approval upon his prophecy. Unfortunately, this prophet, on his way back, going another way, is lied to by another prophet, and told God wants him to come back home with him and eat and drink. But if God tells you to do something, and someone else comes to you telling you to do something to the contrary that God wants you to do, opposite of what he told you before, what should you do? What should you believe? The answer is you should believe what God told you. Other people can lie to you and make up stories about how God came to them and give you a message. But if it's contrary to what God told you to do not believe it. Chapter 13, verse 33. Before I get there, what ends up happening to that prophet because he does not follow what God says, okay? Did not follow that initial message. Well, he goes back, he eats, he drinks, and a lion kills him on the way home. Never even makes it home. It's important to follow what God tells you to do. 13 verse 33. After these things, Jeroboam returned not from his evil way, but made again of the lowest of the people priests of the high places. Whosoever would, he consecrated him. You want to be a priest? Sure, have at it. You can be a priest too. And he became one of the priests in the high places. So he was king and priest. Line of David, were they ever supposed to be king and priest in Israel? No. The priesthood and the kingship was different. The crown and the priesthood were separate, only to be united by prophet, priest, and king, Jesus, someday. They were never supposed to be together. But Jeroboam made himself priest, and this thing became a sin. Verse 34, this thing became a sin unto the house of Jeroboam, even to cut it off and destroy it from off the face of the earth. Despite the prophecy of the sign of divine displeasure, by making his hand wither up and healing it, Jeroboam still continues this false worship system. He never changes. He still does what is wrong. God came to him, gave it to him in the first place. Here, you can have it. You can have this kingdom. It's yours. God fulfills his plan, gives him the kingdom. He turns his back against God. God comes and brings a message to him. His hand withers up. Then it's restored again, and what does he do? Still continues to go after the sin. Still continues to do what's wrong. 14 verse 1. At that time Abijah the son of Jeroboam fell sick. And Jeroboam said to his wife, Arise, I pray thee, and disguise thyself, that thou be not known to be the wife of Jeroboam, and get thee to Shiloh. Behold, there is Ahijah the prophet, which told me that I should be king over this people, and take with thee 10 loaves and cracknels and a cruse of honey, and go to him, and he shall tell thee what shall become of the child. And Jeroboam's wife did so, and arose and went to Shiloh, and came to the house of Ahijah, but Ahijah could not see, for his eyes were set by reason of his age. And the Lord said unto Ahijah, Behold, the wife of Jeroboam cometh to ask thee a thing of thee for her son, for he is sick. Thus and thus shalt thou say unto her, for it shall be, when she cometh in, that she shall feign herself to be another woman. And it was so, when Ahijah heard the sound of her feet, that she came in at the door, and he said, Come in, thou wife of Jeroboam. Why feignest thou thyself to be another? For I am sent to thee with heavy tidings. Jeroboam's wife comes with news of her son's illness. Ahijah meets her with worse news. Here's the worst news. Verse 7, Go tell Jeroboam, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, For as much as I exalted thee from among the people, and made thee prince over my people Israel, and rent the kingdom away from the house of David, and gave it to thee, and yet thou hast not been as my servant David, who kept my commandments, and who followed me with all his heart, to do that only which was right in my eyes, but hast done evil above all that were before thee. For thou hast gone and made thee other gods, and molten images, to provoke me to anger, and hast made me and hast cast me behind thy back. Therefore, behold, I will bring evil upon the house of Jeroboam, and will cut off from Jeroboam him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel, and will take away the remnant of the house of Jeroboam, as a man taketh away dung, till it be all gone. Him that dieth of Jeroboam in the city shall the dogs eat, and him that dieth in the field shall the fowls of the air eat, for the Lord hath spoken it. Jeroboam's dynasty will come to a dishonorable end, since the bodies mentioned will not even be buried, but eaten by dogs and birds. Only Jeroboam's son will escape this fate. Verse 12, Arise thou therefore, get thee to thine own house, and when thy feet enter into the city, the child shall die. And all Israel shall mourn for him and bury him, for he only of Jeroboam shall come to the grave, because in him there is found some good thing toward the Lord God of Israel in the house of Jeroboam. Moreover, the Lord shall raise him up a king over Israel, who shall cut off the house of Jeroboam that day. But what? Even now? For the Lord shall smite Israel as a reed is shaken in the water, and shall root up Israel out of the good land, which he gave to their fathers, and shall scatter them beyond the river, because they have made them gross, provoking the Lord to anger. And he shall give Israel up because of the sins of Jeroboam, who did sin, and who made Israel to sin. And Jeroboam's wife arose and departed, and came to Tirzah. And when she came to the threshold of the door, the child died. And they buried him, and all Israel mourned for him, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake by the hand of his servant Ahijah the prophet. And the rest of the acts of Jeroboam, how he warred and how he reigned, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. In the days which Jeroboam reigned were 22 years, and he slept with his fathers. And Nadab his son reigned in his stead. Belligerence towards God was a bad idea. Both of these kings had every reason to do what was right. They had seen what happens when you do what's right. They had seen what happened when you do wrong. Yet neither of them did. Neither of them did. Let's not be like them. Let's serve the Lord all of our days. Let's trust Him. Let's follow Him. Let's encourage the world around us to do what is right. Lord, I thank you for this day, and I pray each of us would live for you. Give us the strength to do it. You've given us every reason to live for you, and I pray that we would do it. We love you, Lord, so much, and I pray